have the rules of procedure of the Village of West Hampton Beach, and these resolutions were not legally placed on the agenda at the work session. They weren't on there on the agenda 1 week prior, and there was no motion for consent to suspend these requirements that had been adopted by the majority of the board.
Second.
Is there a discussion on this motion?
Sure.
Did we get word from Zuckerman that these could go on? Well, take that back.
I have something to say. As your mayor, I have endeavored to always do the right and best thing for our village. March 8, 2009, a police officer reported to the chief of police that his personally owned firearm had been taken from his locker in the police department.
Can't discuss that. Cannot discuss.
I am not discussing anything further.
Can't
That's a
discuss
field
anything.
report.
Can't discuss anything that's in an investigation or a charges respecting any police officers or any other employee.
I'm sorry.
Otherwise, you can say what you want to say. You just can't discuss those two things.
I'm not discussing anything
Okay.
further. Since that date, 3 members of the village board have systematically attempted to interfere in what they deemed a botched internal investigation in an attempt to demean the chief of police in continuous public meetings. 3 trustees have called for an independent investigation. It was undertaken by the Suffolk County Department of Internal Affairs, delivered to the chief of police and village board. Upon receiving the written report, these trustees questioned the veracity and quality of the report. Based on an independent IA report, the chief filed written charges as directed by the police department rules. The majority of the board questioned that action and passed a resolution ordering the chief of police to withdraw the charges and also reinstate both officers full duty, restoring any back pay lost. I have steadfastly maintained that the trustees' actions were not in the proper way to handle this matter and not in the best interests of the villages. I received Labor Council written opinion, and resulting from that opinion, the improper resolutions passed by the majority of the board should be rescinded. This opinion is in the possession of the trustees, and the recommendation should be followed. I further state, if the board does not concur with the following, our own internal rules, New York State village law, and New York State civil law, I recommend they tender their resignations immediately. That's my
Well,
Say what you want.
First of all, we asked for the investigation. I'm not discussing anything, Paul, that hasn't been discussed.
Here we go again.
You agreed to do this investigation. You agreed that when the report came in, we would sit down as a board and discuss the results of the investigation. But you took it upon yourself, you and Mr. Chief, to suspend the officers without discussing it with the board. We have not to this day sat down as a board and discussed this. So therefore, I'm not going to give you any of my vote for a hearing officer. I'm still waiting for you to sit down with me to discuss it. You refuse. This is not a monarchy. This is a democracy.
I've been in the office every day.
Here we go. You told me you're not going to discuss it. How many times do I have to ask you?
Come in.
I think we've all come in plenty to talk to you about it, Mr. Mayor.
You and I have talked about it so many times.
That's correct.
And I'm blue in the face.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, the board has a right to advance its business, okay? And the repeated inclusion and last minute posturing by you. When did that report come in you're talking about from the labor attorney?
It came in at 9 o'clock this morning.
Okay, and had you requested that this board even authorize the research of that report?
Am I not allowed to talk to our village attorney, or am I not allowed to talk to the labor attorney?
That wasn't the question. That wasn't the question. We had gotten a request for as a board, for the labor attorney to research and to authorize payment and research for that, of which we declined for the various reasons we had explained to you, which had some personnel issues that we can't really discuss. And then miraculously, you've been asked by several people here over the past few meetings if that had been accomplished or we had done it. And in fact, as of last meeting, you stated, I believe Mr. Spear asked you, Mr. Mayor, last Wednesday, if the labor attorney if he had been in touch with the labor attorney. He asked Mrs. Levan first, then he asked you, and you said no. Now all of a sudden,
Mr. Tucker, point of correction.
Okay.
I asked if a meeting had been scheduled.
Okay.
I asked that also a month ago. That was all I asked.
Okay.
Had a meeting been scheduled?
So had a meeting been scheduled, but our thing was the information that you were requesting. It wasn't even the meeting that was being scheduled. Stand to be corrected, Dean. And you said no, and miraculously today a letter appears from the labor attorney this afternoon, or maybe it was this morning.
They gave him the right last
appears from the
meeting
labor
to talk
attorney
to the labor
all of a
attorney.
sudden with information on there that you asked the questions of. You didn't even give us the courtesy of asking us if we had any questions for the labor attorney that would pertain to helping resolve some of the issues here. First of all, I disagree with the interpretation of some of that advice. And, simply put, the mayor and the chief of police are supposed to do what the board of trustees direct. You're supposed to, according to the law, you're supposed to supervise the police department and subordinates. But what that really means is based on what the majority of the Board of Trustees requests and proposes, passes resolutions.
Would you like my
and
opinion
laws.
on this matter, or do I need a majority of the board to speak?
I'm still talking.
Oh,
And no, I would not like that. If you'd like to discuss it with us in executive session, if you have some things to talk to us, because Bo, you know what? The last few times when you told us we were doing illegal things, such as pulling, agenda items off and whatnot, now we find out that's different. So if you want to discuss that stuff with us, I'd be more than happy to get your
I'm asking
opinions
if you
in
want my
executive
opinion,
session.
or do you want to just go in and state what you think the legal opinion is? I'm asking whether you want my
We would
opinion,
like your- we would like
whether
your
you want to.
opinions.
Whether
We would
you
like
want
your
to be the legal counsel to the board and advise the board what is permitted and what isn't, and what occurred and what the law is.
I'd certainly read the rules of procedure that I gave out to the rest of the board before I, started telling them they can't do things in public.